All right, the Allianz Hurling Leagues return this weekend to have a look at the state of the game right now. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by two-time All-Star with Cork, Anthony Nash. How you keeping, Anthony?
All good, Nan, yeah.
And also three-time All-Ireland winner with Limerick, Pat Ryan. You're welcome to the show, Pat.
Sound.
Anthony, I've been listening to yourself and Ger on Friday nights for the last few weeks. Top-class analysis, but I felt you were getting too easy a ride. So we just thought we'd bring Pat on tonight and maybe do a bit of nostalgia on that 2018 semi-final and maybe that goal. Some say the crucial goal in one of the greatest games of all time. What are your memories of it, Anthony?
I'm delighted Pat is joining us tonight now because he can finally admit to everybody that he was trying to flick it over the bar from through an angle and that it looped under. As you said, it was a super game of hurling and we were absolutely gutted leaving because we had given it our all, and I suppose for that game and that season alone, it probably kick-started that Limerick resurgence in hurling then as well. And not only Pat Ryan's goal, I'll remember for Nicky Quaid's save as well. So it was one of the best games probably for a spectator, but for a Cork person and a Cork player especially, it wasn't the most enjoyable experience.
Pat, defend yourself.
Yeah, well, look, I definitely, when you're waiting to get on for an hour maybe and you're waiting, you don't get too many chances when you go through one-on-one, so I definitely wasn't thinking of a white flag going in there and I'll tell you that. But I got very lucky now it went in. It doesn't happen. I only done it because people do say it to me a bit since after that. You only do something like that because your team's going to get hooked from behind, really. That's all it was. Quite lucky, really, to be honest.
Anthony, it obviously goes down as one of the all-time great games of championship hurling. 4.5 years on, are you able to reflect on it, I won't say with fondness, but with pride, because as you say, it's one of those games you left absolutely everything out there. You couldn't have done any more, where there's probably other games throughout your career and you think, geez, we just didn't turn up today.
Yeah, I suppose if you kind of contrast us in 14, we played Tipperary in the All-Ireland semi-final after winning a Munster Championship, and Jesus, we got absolutely annihilated. I suppose losing a semi-final is probably the worst place to lose, though. That's the only thing, and we've been unfortunately on the receiving end of a few beatings up there, because you don't get to obviously play that day out in September at the time, but look, they were a great team and still are obviously a great team. Bittersweet, the only sweet part of it was my cousin Barry was playing and he got to go on and win an All-Ireland. But
you're half a Limerick man yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure. Look, I've been down there the last few years and everything like that. But when you're wearing a Cork jersey, I've been brought up in Cork and playing for Cork. It's
well, I heard you wanted to play for Limerick, but because your surname wasn't Quaid, you probably wouldn't get in.
Well, to be fair, when I first started, I think they tried Nicky out the field, so that might have worked. It might have been hitting each other sharp puckouts, but I was better off. I think for my own career, I was fortunate enough in my career, but yeah, you're right. Look, great game of hurling. Maybe in 10 years more, I might sit down and have a look at it.
Yourself and Barry close?
Very close, yeah, very close, yeah. He's the one thing about it, I say Pat will echo my sentiments here as well. Just it's easy for me to say it as a cousin, but one of the most down-to-earth nice fellas you could come across. I always say, I joined So Liberties, and I said, you've got to know the nice Nashes now. It's time to meet me, So he's the good guy of the family.
Pat, when people think of you, they obviously think of that goal and the importance of it for Limerick. Your role with Limerick over the last few years has been that role of impact sub, of player coming on, having to make a difference in the last 5-10 minutes of games, maybe try and rescue a game or try and shore up a lead. How does that sit with you, that title of being an impact sub?
To be honest, every player wants to start. That never changes. Even when you are in that role, you never really truly accept it in a way. I would say when the team is named on a Friday night, you're always disappointed because you're always pushing hard and trying hard to start, but you have to kind of get over it quite quickly, and John and the managing team are excellent at that in terms of placing the importance on, we'll say, the subs coming in, because at the end of the day, the way I used to look at it was that if the game is anyway close at all, let's say if we're 3 up or 3 down or anywhere in between and you're coming on for the last 10 or 15 minutes, you're being asked to come in probably the most important time in the game. So it doesn't dilute your importance in it if you look at it that way, So, and you can make, you might only get 1 or 2 balls, but if you can make a positive impact with 5 minutes to go and the game is tight, you feel like you're really bringing something to the table. And like I said, the management just put that in place. That John, for instance, before the games, John will come and speak to the subs more than he probably even speak to the management or speak to the starting 15. And even on the Tuesday night, going through maybe tactics or stuff like that, it's no such thing as just talking to the starting 15 players. It's okay, lads, in the room, we need people to come in now and finish this off for us if we're in a good position, or if we're not, we need massive amounts of energy coming in. So it really is, as much as the cliche say, it really is all about the group,
Yeah, that terrible term finishers has crept into the GAA world over the last couple of years. And as you say, there's different scenarios. There's probably the scenario you come on in the 2 All-Ireland finals where you come on where the game is done and dusted and you can probably come on and it's a really nice position knowing that the game is won. There's other times where it's right in the melting pot, where it's red hot and you're coming on cold from the bench. What do you do, and what do the S&C team do behind the scenes? What does John Cahill do? So what do you do so that when you come on with 5 minutes to go, you're able to hit the ground running?
Even kind of the phrasing of it, like, no one has ever kind of phrased it as finisher or as third inside. Actually, in the last kind of year and a bit, there was kind of a term, maybe 2 years, like we'd been like the subs would refer to themselves or the management as the bomb squad. You know what I mean? Coming in that time, and that kind of leads into what you're saying. How do you do coming in? It's the whole idea. And Grod Higgert used to say it to me a lot. He used to say, like, you know, when you're coming on now, like if you come on now in this game, he'd say to me in the dressing room, bring an awful lot of energy. You know what I mean? Because obviously, like, you know, for people that have played 50, 55, 60 minutes out there, you know, it's so physical and stuff like that. So you're bound to be tired. So the idea of people coming off the bench, you know what I mean, bringing massive amounts of energy, it's to, obviously, a cornerback maybe doesn't want to see a fella coming in that's bouncing off the ground coming in. And then for likes of Grod or someone out the field who's been working really hard, like he tell me, you know, it gives them a massive lift when they see fellas coming in with loads of energy. So that's kind of the main way we'd approach it. Like, is the idea is that when you come on, you'll give an impact without even the ball, just by the energy you'll have. Maybe if it's roaring at a couple of lads, you know, like Keane Lynch, and wake up, you know, come in, because sometimes he gets kind of lost there in games, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. It just brings them back to focus. So that's kind of it, really.
Yeah. Have you ever come on the pitch and not just bounced off the opposition defender?
Never, no. That's what really warms you up, to be honest.
So your current situation, you were, this time last year you were in the squad. I think you've been back in the squad since, have you? Did you start back at pre-season training this year?
Yeah.
You're still only 28?
Yeah, later in the year, yeah. So I got the pre-season in and stuff like that. But when the league panel was coming to be put together, like, you know, I just didn't make the squad for this year. Would say, you know, that's just kind of just the way it is. Like, there's fierce young talent coming through, and obviously, look, I was disappointed. Do you know what I mean? You're disappointed.
Yeah. How does that conversation go with John? How does that conversation go with John Cahill?
Just like every conversation I've ever had with him, to be honest, it's just complete honesty on his part. That, you know, he'll just let you know, and he'll tell you, like, look, you know, you might be doing this for me or something like that, or we might be looking at this kind of player or something like that. And like I said, like, there's some of the young players coming through in the county right now are extremely impressive, as you've probably seen in the league. Some of the guys that have made their debuts, and, you know, like I said, I was disappointed not to be involved for this year. But instead of looking at you know, what I don't have in this year coming, I'd rather look back at the last 6 or 7 years, what I did get out of it. So it was I feel more lucky than unlucky, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there's many a player who doesn't have 3 All-Ireland medals in the back pocket. Your reflections on last season, and you were in the squad, you dropped out after the Tipperary game. There was an incident after that match. There was a disciplinary issue. Can you talk to us about what happened there and the fallout from that, and then managing to make your way back in again at the start of this season?
Yeah, well, sure, look, basically, like, there was halfway through the Munster Championship. It was just, I won't get into too much detail now, obviously, but it was just, there was kind of an incident where after a game where I let the standards of the group down, basically, and you know, the following day, I woke up quite early and on reflection just rang John. We met in that evening, and like I said before, just a very, very, probably the most honest man I've ever met. You know, he's obviously he's a principal by nature as well, so it was like kind of a principal's meeting, but there's no talking down to you or anything like that. It's just, okay, this has happened now, and you know, the group is too important, and he's like that management team have done for years. They're only looking at what's best for Limerick. So it was just a case of, look, you've done this now, you know, I take full accountability, which I did. When I said to him, he was like, look, thanks, you have to take a step back from the group now, and we'll talk in a couple of months. That was kind of it, really.
And when you get the call to go back in, do you feel with John Cahill it was a clean slate then going back in, that you'd served your time under him? Yeah,
100%. Well, I've worked with John 2 years under 21 and the last 6 years senior, so you know what I mean. He's you know, like I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but he's very honest that way. Like, you know what I mean. He said to me that day, he was like, look, he would say, take a step back from the group, and I'll talk to you in a couple of months. And when he did call me back in, then, you know, of course, it was there was no hangover or anything like that. It was just you know, it was just picked up as usual, to be honest.
Anthony, looking at the league campaign so far, like, it's so hard to analyse, and it's frustrating in a lot of ways that it feels we can't analyse it properly, that everything comes with a health warning because we're not quite sure where certain teams are. So should we be excited about Tip? Is there a revival there? Are they just at a different stage of their fitness? From what you've seen of Limerick and new players coming through, maybe trying to add a little bit of depth, trying to discover something a bit different. What's been the standout for you over the 3 games so far?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's very hard, and it's always spoken about that different teams are doing different things at time of year. Like, you know, like you see Wexford one week doing unbelievably well and then getting hammered by Clare getting hammered by Limerick, coming out and do what they did to Wexford. So it's very up and down league this year, but that's down to, I think, just the closeness to championship. I think the worrying thing is that how well Limerick are doing, I suppose, for the oppositions. Like, you know, they're going so consistently well as well. Like, they came down to Cork in a very tight game, and Cork turned them over, but after that then they've pushed on and shown very professional performances. And like Pat referred to there, like, you know, the young fellas like Adam and Shane coming in there as well are only adding to the panel, and any panel that can go on without the likes of Pat on it are obviously showing the strengths of it. So I suppose for the opposition kind of looking in, there doesn't seem to be any major drop off in intensity or want or desire on that side. Your earlier point about Tipperary, I think Liam Cahill was always going to bring a kind of a boost or a jump to that team. We won the Fitzgibbon last year, and we were out that night, and I said to Kieran Connolly, he was going away to America for the summer, and I said to him, like, and why was he going? He said, look, he might never get the chance again. And we got conversations about Liam Cahill, and he said the players couldn't wait to get him back, like, that he was the guy that drove that 21 team, like, and that, you know, they loved training hard underneath him. So if you looked at the panel he picked at the start of the year, a lot of that team has been brought back in. You know, even as far as one of the young fellas that was down playing club hurling in Clare was brought back down as well. So, like, it's like they're a team that I always think that when they're guided correctly, they always have the hurlers. You know, and those 21 hurlers on top of Seamus Callan and Jason Ford and Noel McGrath. I know they've lost Cahill Barrett, and he's one of the best defenders in the country, but we no fear of them now either. Come championship, they'll be a lot stronger than they were last year.
Pat, just on Limerick, while we're talking about them there, they play Westmeath this weekend, so the expectation will be that they'll go and win that game. Kyle Hayes misses out, 1-match ban after that Galway game. Jimmer Burns, it seems, on his way back towards full fitness, having taken a longer break. Aaron Gillane, it seems, still in exile. Now, you know, wouldn't be right to comment on the speculation around why he's not there. John Kiley's been refusing to comment on whether he's left the squad. It seems he's been playing soccer quite a bit at weekends back in Limerick over the last while. From a purely hurling point of view with Gillane, it has looked in these opening few games for Limerick that there is no like-for-like replacement for him.
No, there isn't, but sure, look, no two players are the same, to be honest. That's the case in any team, I think, really. So if another player comes in, he's bringing different strengths, you know what I mean? You look at what Shane has brought since he's come in, young Shane O'Brien, like, you know what I mean? He's bringing an aerial threat as well, and a scoring threat, as he's shown. Like, you look at Adam English, the kind of the pace that he brings, you know what I mean? Kind of an eye for scores as well. Obviously, he's Anthony Seif, like, you know, through him in the college. So look, it's never about any one individual, you know what I mean? And it's never about replacing one individual. Like I said, everyone is different. And look, you know what I mean? There's a very good panel there yet, and there's more fellas you'll see probably this weekend that you haven't seen yet, and they'll be hoping to put their hands up as well.
So you spoke there about the young players that have emerged and forced their way into the squad. Who of the players that you've either seen behind the scenes over the last couple of years, or even you've seen over the first few weeks of the league, are the ones who you think can be pushing towards a starting 15 in the championship or into those one of impact sub roles?
Oh, look, there's loads there, as you've seen, like, you know what I mean, with some of the boys, like young Shane O'Brien, I have been impressed with now, like, to be honest, because last year was his first year hurling senior club even, and he was brilliant at that. My own clubman Adam English, like I said, Donegal Darling is done really well, I would say, as that impact role in the first couple of games. One player that I know you'd be familiar from last year, him coming on, Cahill O'Neill. We haven't really seen much of him this year because of a few injuries, but he's a player now that I think is going to make a massive step up this year, personally, and I think he's going to turn a few heads when he does, we say, hopefully break into the team or you know, whatever capacity that's in. Last year he started 1 or 2 games maybe, but even when Keane went off against Waterford, you know, and we were losing that game early on, Cahill came in and really kind of started to steer the ship from centre forward, which was really impressive for a young lad, you know.
Anthony, your thoughts on Gillane? When we look at this Limerick team, there's just superstars everywhere in every different game. Somebody else steps up. But if he was to not come back for this year's championship, how much does that weaken that Limerick attack?
Look, any team losing the calibre of Aaron Gillane is going to be weakened. Like Pat said, a different player is going to bring something different. The one challenge I find they'll have to change their kind of maybe their team around a little bit, because it's either going to be Mahal Houlihan or Dave Reedy on the freeze. Neither of them slot straight into that position. Now Pat might know better, but like, to find a free taker as accurate as Aaron Gillane, I know Tom Morrissey takes frees at times during the league then as well, but like, you've got Flanagan and Gillane who seem to be so in sync inside the edge of the square. You know, and that's when Pat comes in to add that exact like energy he's always talking about. So like you've got those two lads that are just so like they work so well together, like they run behind each other, in front of each other, get that thing. But to understand that your full forward is your free taker, and with Shane O'Brien going in there at the moment, with Seamus Flanagan or whatever else, or Graham Mulcahy, I don't think any of them are natural free takers at the inter-county scene. So I think it's more where another player might start or might have to be moved to take frees. No, I guarantee if you took any of those Limerick forwards away for a couple of weeks and got them to practice frees, they'd be fine too. But I'd be very surprised if we don't see Aaron Gillan this year in Championship at some stage. He's hugely important. Like, look, like, you know, but like Pat said, to say that, like, we went through a whole year last year without the hurler there, Cian Lynch, and Limerick still won an All-Ireland. So, like, you can even hear from Pat there, like, that they'll replace him. And they won't look back. They'll replace him. They'll go with someone else if he's not there. But I think he'll be there. But I think the biggest challenge for me is finding that natural inter-county free taker that when you're a level or a point down, that has the guts and the balls to put down a free and put it over from an angle that I think Gillan has. And not only that, like his goal-scoring threat and his presence at the edge of the square, he'd obviously be a huge loss, yeah.
You'd obviously be well aware of a lot of these young Limerick players as well. Who are the ones that you're looking at that you feel could make that breakthrough?
Yeah, I look to echo Pat's. I would like Shane O'Brien is new to the team, but I would have worked in UL with Cahill and Adam English. Like Cahill O'Neill, I think to me was probably the closest to starting, because I actually walked into a petrol station there a few weeks back in Limerick before I went back down to UL, and I thought it was a rugby player from Munster, a second row rugby player in front of me.
Right.
Next thing he turned around and he was him, and like I had met him before, but the physique and the size he's after putting on this winter is scary. Then I went into and I met Adam English, and it was like a fella was after putting on another 2 stone of muscle on him. He's like a little bull. So like these guys, not only are they ready to hurl at the inter-county level with their skill, but physically they're unreal. And like you've the likes of Colin Coughlin down there as well. Like the thing about Limerick at the moment is that their age profile and this team is still very young. You're only trying to find 1 or 2 players a year until those older statesmen, not even older, but they decide to step away. Like you see during the league, like, you know, look at the league, you've got Adam Cahill will be coming back in soon after his injury, Shane O'Brien, and then you've got the likes of Diarmaid Burns to come back in, and they're always mixing around. So look, it's a scary prospect again for the year from outsiders. Like, but I think for me, Cahill and Adam are the 2 I work first hand with and closest with. So I think the 2 of them will definitely be seeing a lot of game time this year.
Pat, I think Anthony raises a question that a lot of people have had about this Limerick team, which is the size of your jerseys and whether they're ordered smaller than everybody else so you can all show off your muscles and your physique. Does anyone not wear a skin tight jersey?
Yeah, well, Dan Morrissey definitely could do with a size up in it, that's for sure.
Jeez, he was bursting through the seams.
Yeah.
When you're talking there about Cahill O'Neill and the way he's developing physically, I do wonder, you probably have experience from the few months off on Aaron Gillan, like the strength and conditioning at Limerick. It feels like it's a step ahead of where everybody else is at the moment, the conditioning of the players. If you end up spending 6 months away, how difficult is it to get back into that shape, that physical shape that you're expected to be in to play in this Limerick team?
To be honest, there's no like this. A lot of the lads will say involved in Limerick, like most, like, you know, everyone involved in that panel, there's no such thing as time away. What I don't mean by that is that Limerick train all year round, because they don't. But like, you know, a couple of weeks after an Ireland or a couple of weeks after a club championship, you know, an S&C coach doesn't need to be getting on to fellas on that panel. Like, you know what I mean? They're just there working away. Like, it's just you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, hard work, which is really important, but like the habit of doing it is even more important. You know what I mean? They don't have to be on a program just to be working away, like going to the gym on a Monday. It's just become a routine and a habit, maybe all year round, bar 1 or 2 weeks around Christmas, where you're just, you know, you're not even doing it to try and get, as people say, bigger and this and that. You're just doing it because you enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I think it was Kyle Hayes I heard talking before Christmas about going into the gym that you use maybe 3-4 days after the All-Ireland final just to blow off the cobwebs after maybe a few days celebrating, and there was about 10 of the team in there working out already. Now it's nice to have that story going around as well, of course, for the opposition, so that they all know how hard you're working all year round. So that's Limerick, 2 wins. They play Westmeath this weekend. Saturday night, Semple Stadium, Tipperary against Waterford. Interesting for a number of reasons. Liam Cahill being the obvious one. Also the fact that Waterford are going to play their home games in the Munster Championship again at Semple Stadium. The way you're talking about Liam Cahill there and how excited the Tip players were, Anthony, is that man management? Is that his style of coaching? What were you hearing?
Can we have a manager cam on Liam Cahill and Davy on the sideline? I think that'll be more interesting than the pitch at times. I think 2 of the most fiery people you could have in the sideline. From the outside, we seem to have 2 similar styles of managing as well, where it's kind of full on intense, And that's why I was kind of not surprised that Davy went back down to Waterford, but interested to see how the players would receive him after having that kind of bust up with Liam at the end of the year, It'll be an interesting game. In fact, that Liam is obviously going big against Waterford as well. So I think, look, some teams, some counties relish in working with a style of manager. And just talking to Kieran there, like that time, and even Brian O'Mara as well, they were just talking about that they just clicked with him, like he was a hard taskmaster, but they, obviously getting success in and showing that it worked would give those players belief and confidence in his system then as well. Like, so coming back down, I know last year there was probably ups and downs with Colin Bonner down there now, and I know it ended poorly. And he was after, giving Tip great service both as a player and a manager and everything like that. But like by all accounts now, training is going fairly well down there. We had a couple of lads from down there with you well as well, like, and they came back and they're hurling well, like, so obviously things are going okay down there, and it's just a bit of freshness down there. And as I said, a lot of new players getting their opportunity with a mixture of very, very experienced players, like, as I mentioned there a while ago, you've Noel McGrath, Seamus Callan, and Ronan Maher, Jason Ford's still there, and like Jason Ford's hitting form in the league again that he always does. So I just think it's just, look, a Tip man coming back down who has like oceans of energy. The players wanted him, the players got him, they wanted him the last time as well, and he, it broke down between themselves and the county board. So I think that, look, when the players get what they want, they're always going to give you a kickback, and it'll be interesting to see how the championship goes with him. Because I look, the one thing you're going to get with Tipperary and Liam Cahill, they're going to be a horrible team to play against regarding work ethic and work rate. So but Saturday night will be very interesting, the fact that it's Cahill versus Tip, or Cahill versus Waterford, and Cahill versus Davy as well.
You'd have to assume, Pat, as well, that Cahill has learned a lot from last year's championship, even with Waterford and their league campaign, where it felt like they started the season so well and then it just fell off a cliff. That every coach, every management, every team is learning about this new calendar and this new system and how to peak at the right time. Now Tip have started very well again, and maybe they needed that burst of energy. You would have to hope from a Tip point of view that they have learned that how to sustain this deeper into the summer than Waterford did last year.
Yeah, true, yeah. I can't speak, like, I've never really been involved in management now and that thing, but I know that, like, you hear a lot about the league, and I've always, myself and other players, like, we've often heard this the last kind of year or two, that is the league divided, this, that. Like, I can tell you from a fact, like, speaking to, and being involved in the league for the last 2 years, that players absolutely love the league. Players want to win the league. Like, that's just a fact. Like, that game now Saturday night for Tip and Waterford is probably the biggest game of the weekend in terms of, the most kind of even game. And both of them players are going to be going 100%, like, and you spoke about Liam Cahill coming in there with Tip and what they're doing. Tip are kind of like Man United in a way, like the way like United talk about a culture of playing, the way they play. Like Tip are like that in terms of goal scoring. That was always kind of their niche, that they could score loads of goals. Like, you go back to when they took down Kilkenny to score 4 goals in that Ireland. I remember my first time being involved in Limerick. I was on the extended panel in 2016. They beat us in the Munster semi-final. They scored 3 goals. There's always the kind of thing with Tipperary scoring goals. And now, when they've beaten Kilkenny in Dublin away, they've scored 2 goals in both games. So that's what's really interesting to me now for Saturday night. You're looking at a team that's prime to score goals in Liam Cahill's team, and you're looking at Davy then, who's his main objective, the way he sets up, is to not concede a goal. So really, really looking forward to that game. And both teams, I would feel that there's going to be 2 really strong 15s for that game now, because they've had a week off, we'll say, from a game. And it should be that'll be up around championship pace, I'll tell you.
I know you're saying there, Pat, that players love the league. We're always wondering on the outside about that priority list as to how seriously certain teams are taking it, and we sort of look at Limerick this year and go, they've just been out on their warm weather training camp, that they can ease themselves in, and that if they peak in July, they're happy enough because they know they'll have enough skill to get there. Are those public conversations that happen within camps of, we sort of know where we are, we're going to train hard this week, and we might take the hit at the weekend?
No, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen amongst players anyway, that's for sure. Like, the management obviously have their own, maybe the management have different conversations. Let's say the players' point of view, and I can only speak my time with Limerick, players wouldn't be like that at all. Like, you know what I mean? Players are openly hungry, really, to want to win every competition they're in, you know what I mean? And if you heard Tom Morrissey there when he collected his man of the match after the Galway game, he said, he's 2 league medals, but he said he wouldn't like to finish up with just 2. So that'll kind of give you an insight into the mind frame of players. And there's a league semi-final there to be got if they can pick up the next 2 wins. And then when you're in a semi-final, sure, all you want to do is be into a final. And finals are for winning, as they say. So I can only comment on the player side of things, and players really want to win this. They don't look at things like, time before championship and this and that. Sure, what else are you going to be doing? Only training anyway, and training hard.
But would you have had a sense of times of actually, most weeks ahead of a big game you might have 2 sessions, that some weeks you'd have 4 sessions before a league game, because actually coaches are putting more stock on actually what's happening there than what happens in the result at the weekend.
Yeah, fact. Yeah. And players just want to play games, like, you know what I mean? And you'll have certain players that haven't even played much games that played last year, you know what I mean, coming back in over the next 2 weeks now. And they wouldn't like to finish up, we'll say, after the last group game. They want to be involved and play. You mentioned Jimmer Burns, like, you know what I mean? He'll be hoping to get in this weekend and the Wexford game. And obviously, he'd love to play in the league semi-final, get himself fine-tuned for the first round of the championship and stuff like that. So, no, Limerick will be going, from the players' point of view anyway, will be going 100% in all their games.
What about Waterford then, Anthony? Ozzie Gleeson's been sprung from the bench. Is this the week where you throw him in from the start?
Yeah, I think it's like, look, Pat's like when I played league games, you wanted to win, of course. I think managements do dictate the energy of the games because of the S&C plans that go through, and those people become so important during the league as well. Like, you know, how fellas are geared up to it. So, but I think then the manager looks at it and then goes, right, what games do I want my full strength team? Like Davy won't want to put a step back, and he'll want his senior players getting a few league games. Like, if you can get a semi-final, like Pat said there, it's another challenging game. It's another, as close to championship you're going to get, rather than going away ringing a team for the challenge match and that have been knocked out as well. So I think the likes of Davy will be looking to try and put his 15 together, because the question he might have is, where's the best place to play him? He might have found out already. That's the one thing I always find with Austin Gleeson is, where is his best position? Where can he most influence the game for Waterford? So it'll be, look, we could be sitting here and next thing find out in a couple of hours' time that he's not playing or anything like that. But I would expect him to play, and I'd expect the likes of, I think Desi Hutchinson missed the last day, and I know Bennett had been sent off and stuff. So he'll be trying to get his 6 forwards clicking together as well, which is important in league as well, because you're going to get lads used to playing with each other under, like Pat said, a new style of play now again, like where they're gone back to more of a defensive style of system where you might only have 5 forwards. So I definitely think he'll be starting to spring him in for the last, look, you potentially have only two competitive games left if you don't make the semi-final of the league. So I'd say he'll be looking to put the first 15 out, as Pat said.
Plenty of other interesting games across Sunday as well. Galway looking to win an Ennis for the first time in 14 years, conceded a huge score against Cork, 4-24, then beaten last time out by 5 points by Limerick. It feels like, I don't want to say it's stagnating in Galway because it's so early in the season, but it does feel as though they're lacking a little bit of energy at this stage of the season.
Yeah, I was saying last week to George, remember you were saying he was taking it easy on me on the show. I was saying that they're like, every team in Ireland's lacking a young Joe Canning, but I think Galway at the moment just seem to be lacking a bit of firepower up front. Now against Limerick, I think they brought on Conor Whelan out the field, and they need to get him back into the edge of the square, where he's the focal point of the Galway attack, and I think most teams that play against him don't like to see him at the edge of the square because he's so dangerous, so strong. And such a fantastic hurler as well. So again, for the likes of Galway, and I think Pat touched on it there, each manager knows that 2 weeks off, so they have time to regroup, do a bit of training. I know the Cork lads are back to play with their clubs as well, so that'll give them a bit of a break mentally as well to go back. And they'll all be kind of looking at these last 2 games now to kind of start putting a bit of emphasis on their championship teams. With all due respects to Wexford, I'd say Limerick mightn't be kind of, if they have injuries, they might mind them or whatever like that. But I think, even Clare and Galway is always a local rivalry, that neither team will want to lose. So, again, I think Henry will be looking for a bounce back there and trying to get his 15 out. But, again, another very competitive game. And Clare, after coming off such a hiding the last day, beating Wexford, they'll be continuing on to, like Pat said, they were Tipperary. They'll be trying to keep the habit of scoring goals going.
Pat, one thing I'm interested in with Clare is that, so Tony Kelly is back. Aidan McCarthy is now on the freeze, and you see the line that it takes the pressure off Tony Kelly that he's not on freeze. And Aidan McCarthy got a big score in the last game, scored 6 points from freeze, scored 110 in total. Part of me thinks for a forward though, for their ego, Tony Kelly of the world wants to be taking freeze. He wants to be scoring double figures, 10, 12, 15 points a game. What's your thoughts on that, whether taking the freeze off Kelly will free him up in other parts of his game?
To be honest, I played in UL with Tony, and he's a real team player, I'll tell you that. He's the most team player you could ever get. If Aidan McCarthy is going to score all the frees, Tony Kelly won't mind at all, I'll tell you that now for sure. And Tony's some addition to come back, he's going to score a lot of points in play anyway. You know what I mean? He's still going to be the number 1 player on that team anyway, regardless of him taking the frees. So I don't see it as a massive issue. I think the likes of Aidan McCarthy and Shane Morey back this year as well. That's clear. I know they went out in the All-Ireland semi-final. Would say they would have liked to have played a lot better than they did. Clare had a very good year last year, so when you're adding back in two players of that calibre, and the likes of Mark Rogers and Shane Meehan getting a year older, they're nearly 2 new players as well, you know what I mean, the experience they would have got from all in big games last year. So between Morey, McCarthy, Meehan and Rogers, I think Clare are going to be very dangerous this year, to be honest. And
Tony doesn't even take the frees for Ballier anyway, so I don't think it's a big deal for him. Like, he came in, I think DC missed 1 or 2 in the latter stages of the Munster Championship, whatever like that, and then he took him over. So I don't think it's a huge deal for him. I know he would have been the main man scoring for Clare anyway, but isn't it a fantastic backup to have? And if Aidan McCarthy has been so accurate with them, then Tony can, be moving out. And like Pat said there a second ago, again, working with Mark Rogers inside Newell, like, who missed a lot of last year. He got injured in Fitzgibbon. Like, they're a team now this year that, like, if they can just click, get everyone back right and keep them fit. And remember, Lash was there in the semi-final, like, they found out the day before that John Conlon was gone, like, and, taking John Conlon out of a Clare team is obviously detrimental to them, like, especially at centre-back. So a team, again, that I think will show will have a huge say in the championship.
And I was at that game. They actually said the day before, they even tried 20 minutes to see could he still play. He came out, he's doing the warm-up, and he was just walking around, so they only really meant to change 20 minutes for him, so that was massive.
We're tight enough on time. The other games at the weekend, Antrim against Laois, both of them have lost their first 3 games, so whoever loses that will end up in a relegation playoff, more than likely against Westmeath. We have Kilkenny against Dublin at Nolan Park. Cork Wexford is interesting because rarely in the league can 2 teams have come into a match in such different form, Anthony. The response from Wexford is going to be interesting. You always expect one, but when you look at an injury list of Lee Chin, Matt O'Hanlon, Rory O'Connor, Mark Fanning, Kevin Foley, Liam Ryan, Paddy Foley staying in Australia, it's hard to see how they muster up that response against a Cork team who are flying. like bar Limerick, can another team lose that many players and still be as strong? And even the name, the caliber of player after you're like, remember now, some counties just have 15 players, and in their next 6 or 7 players are close to them. Like, do Wexford have that strength and depth when you're replacing the likes of those that they can fire a player back in? So, like, we can read as much as we want into the Clare and Wexford game. Like, they had huge injuries. The flip side of that, then, like, Cork have an opportunity. I think if they win, mathematically they're through to the league semi-final, and plus you want to win all your home games. So yeah, it'll be a very intriguing, interesting game to see what Darragh Egan does. Very nice man, actually. Met him a good few times there last year, and like, you'd like to see them do well. But like any manager that has that many injuries, it's very hard to compete and put out 100% performances all the time. Pat Anthony's on here every Friday night, bigging up Cork for the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're back. The things they're going to do this season. Don't be looking at me like that, Anthony. You know what's happened.
I thought your was bad until I came on this now. Like, you're putting words in my mouth now.
Look, they beat Limerick first time out. As mentioned, they put up a huge score against Galway and then beat Westmeath last time out. Where are Cork, do you feel, from what you've seen of them so far, Pat?
Yeah, no, very, very impressed, to be honest. And not necessarily with them just like playing well and stuff like that, but it was kind of the response they gave against Limerick. I was watching that game at half time, and I'd be straight up, I thought the game was over after 20 minutes. So like a lot of people did, I'm sure, but the response was unreal. And to go up to Salt Hill is a tough place to go, and to put 4 goals past them, it's they seem like the real deal so far. Now they won't be getting carried away. I don't think anyone will. They started the league well last year, and it didn't things didn't go as well. Like, Wexford actually beat them in this return fixture last year, but I can't see it happen this weekend. Like, you mentioned some of the lads that are away. Like, 2 of the most important ones for me are Liam Ryan full back and Paddy Foley centre back. When we played them last year, but when Wexford, they beat us up there, and the 2 of them were outstanding that day at full back and centre back. So very, very hard to play a game, especially when we're going down to Cork as well. Like, I mentioned earlier about Tipperary, so good at scoring goals. Cork are pretty good too, but even they can rack up near 30 points very quick. So I don't know. I think Cork are going to put a big score the weekend. All
right, Pat, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Well,
Anthony, I don't think you'll want to come on Thursday. You're safer on the Friday nights now, are you?
I think I am. And in fairness, we were saying down here when like James Dunn, when he talked cute Kerry whore, but now that I know that Pat is on the show, he's a cute Limerick whore building Cork up there now as well.
All right, brilliant stuff. Anthony Nash, we'll talk to you soon.
Great, thanks, lads.
Well, thanks.